What shall I say to them? Now we're going to stop right there for a moment. Because in order to really appreciate this dramatic high point of the story, we need to understand first two key contextual historical facts. The first being, in the ancient world, people believed that names were both predictive and descriptive of the essence of a person's personality and character. In the ancient world, when you named a person, you didn't pick a name because it sounded nice, or it was pretty, or someone in your family was named that. In the ancient world, you picked a child's name because of the meaning, and you believed that name would affect the very destiny of that child. It's kind of like, have you ever looked at the history of names? It's quite fascinating. And I began to look at some of those names in regard to us here this morning. I thought of our board members first. Kathy and Catherine. It's an English word. It comes from the Celtic. It means one who is pure or virginal. So if we're living in the ancient world, we'd be looking at all of our Catherines, Kathy, Catherine, Kathleen, and thinking, what's, are they pure and virginal? I figured we'd probably get a few laughs. Gina comes from the Greek. It means farmer or one who works the earth. Dan comes from the Hebrew. It means worshiper of God. David comes from the Hebrew. It means beloved. Irene comes from the Greek. It means peace. Eli comes from the Greek, meaning noble or sun ray. Justin comes from the Latin. It means just, upright, or righteous. Yeah, that's a little bit iffy. Paul comes from the Hebrew, means small and humble. Carl comes from the German. I was telling him this morning because he wasn't going to be in the service. He's picking up friends. Means a generous man that works hard and sometimes gets angry. Jerry is from the German word meaning spear warrior. Mark comes from the Latin, means defender or warlike. Joe means God is gracious. Corky, bright and lively. Tammy, spicy. Tim comes from the Greek meaning to honor God. Matt comes from the Hebrew meaning a gift of God. Maybe that's your gift, Tim. Angela comes from the Greek meaning messenger. Jesse comes from the Hebrew meaning God is gracious. Ron is Scottish in origin. It means mighty. Sam is from the Hebrew. It means one who listens well. Lou comes from the German, and it means famous in battle. Pepe is the Spanish version of the Hebrew name Joseph, meaning God will increase. And for my mom, who I know watches every single one of our services, my mom's name is Edna. It comes from the Hebrew meaning pleasure. And then I think of my name and Doc's name, Ricky. It's a derivative of Richard, which means manly, strong, and handsome. I have to confess I made that up. I made that up. Our name means brave power or brave ruler. In the ancient world, the belief was a name could shape destiny. So when you met someone, you wanted to know their name because you believed in that name, you could find something about the character of that person. Now, when you look at it that way, Moses asked God, what is your name? In effect, Moses is saying, who are you? When I go to the people of Israel and start talking to them about the God of their ancestors, what will I tell them is the essence of your personality and character, who is calling them out of slavery. But it doesn't stop there. Remember, there's a second key contextual historical fact. They believed knowing a person's name actually gave you a certain power or control over that person, because then you could invoke that person's name and a blessing or a curse. Someone's name was to impact them profoundly. This was even truer in their thinking about their ancient gods. In the ancient world, they believed to know the personal name of a god or goddess was actually to gain a certain measure of control over that god or goddess. So you could publicly invoke that god's name, and then if that god did not do what you told him to do, the god would be put to shame. So you see Moses in Exodus chapter 3 here, which I believe is very early in Moses' religious development, probably carrying with him many of these ancient superstitions. When Moses sees this God who's powerful enough to make this bush burn and not burn up, he's probably thinking to himself in terms of ulterior motives. Hey, if I can figure out the personal name of this powerful God, then I can have some control over this power. And I can make some things happen. So now with those two things as background, let's go back where Moses says, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me. They ask me, what is your name? What shall I say to them? Notice how God responds there in verse 14. I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. Now if you were to walk up to me and ask me what my name is, and I responded by saying, I am who I am, you'd probably think I was trying to evade the question. Well, many Bible scholars believe that is exactly what's taking place here in the conversation between Moses and God. In other words, it is like God saying to Moses, you're going to have to stop thinking about how other people think about their gods. I will not be manipulated. If you're going to serve me, the great I am the one who's going to be in control, not you. And that, by the way, is probably one of the hardest spiritual lessons to ever learn, because there is a part of us, just like the ancient people, that want to manipulate and have ulterior motives. A part of ourselves that kind of wants to get to know God and get close to God so that we can get more of what we want when we want it. Just ask it in the name of Jesus and it'll happen. You know, many times I have prayed and said in the name of Jesus, and you know what? God has said no. Many times God says, no, I'm in control here, Ricky. I have prayed for loved ones dying. And God has had the audacity to say, no, it's their time, Ricky. You're not in charge. I am. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying there's no power in prayer. But a prayer that is prayed contrary to God's plan, to God's will, is not going to go anywhere. It is one of the most important lessons that we can learn spiritually, saints, because there are more people who are operating out of this primitive mindset who are losing their faith because they think that to know God means that you can get whatever you want, whenever you want from God. And here God is reminding us, no, no, no. I'm the one who's in control. If you want to serve me, the great I am, then you're going to have to go with my plan, with my program.